Welcome back to War Stories and Fairy Tales. I'm Scott, I'm your layman, and this is our history of war. So where does that title come from? Well, it's from an old soldier's joke. What's the difference between a war story and a fairy tale? One starts once upon a time, and the other one starts, no shit, there we were. So no shit, here we are. And this is our first background episode. Today I'm going to give you a little bit of intel on, well, who the hell I am, and what the hell I think I'm doing with this channel. Before we start, here's your trigger warning, just in case you didn't get it from the name of the channel. This is a show about war. We talk here about killing and dying and the other awful things people do to each other when they fight. I'm not going to nerd out on the gore, but I'm also not going to shy away from talking about violence and killing. If that's not your cup of tea, thank you for stopping by, and I hope you find something else you enjoy watching. So we've got that out of the way. My name is Scott Dalton, and this is a project I've been kicking around in my head for about 30 years. The project to catalog and describe every battle in history. It's not a project I can complete in my lifetime. There's something like 12,000 battles in the historical record. If we cover one every week, that's more than 230 years of content. And that's before we talk about context or background or military principles or maneuver or any of the other general information you need to really dig into the history of war. I'm in my 50s. I probably don't have 230 years left. So if I can't possibly succeed, why do it? Because more than 30 years ago, a professor inspired me with a fascination for the history of the military art. James Herson, U.S. Army, retired, probably at least a colonel when you got out. If you're out there and you somehow see this is your fault. And I'm also doing it because I learned during 12 years of service in the U.S. Army that soldiers are some of my favorite people on earth. Why? Because to paraphrase Winston Churchill, I'm one of those people who sees courage as the foremost of human qualities, because without it, none of the others are possible. And there aren't many situations in the human experience where courage is more in evidence than when facing war and battle. When you can stand in front of a bunch of guys who want to kill you and not run away screaming, you know damn well who you are. And for a soldier, that's just part of the job description. And because one day the right person might just hear something I say at just the right time, and it might just light in them the same fire my professor lit in me years ago. And that might just make one person's life a little better. Okay, so that said, who am I and what the hell makes me think I'm the one to take on this project? As I said, my name is Scott Dalton. As to my qualifications, I have none. I am what you call an enthusiastic layman, hence the title of the show. I am not a trained historian or a journalist or an archaeologist. I'm a 12-year veteran of the United States Army, as I mentioned, but to be honest, I wasn't a very good soldier. I spent a year in Iraq, during which time I was shot at twice and never fired my weapon. I have barely experienced war in the information age, much less endured the wars of past ages. But I've seen enough to understand that the best and worst of humanity can be found in the ranks, where men and women stand together and live or die in large part based on how well they work together and how much they trust each other. And that's the part that fascinates me, because as powerful as technology is on the battlefield, it eventually balances out. And when that happens, the fight comes down to the poor bastards on the field. And sometimes it's nothing more complicated than their conduct in the critical moment that determines who goes home and who doesn't. If that moment is of interest to you as well, I hope you'll stick with me. Now, I know a lot about military history, but not nearly as much as some folks do. I'll be honest, part of the reason I want to take on this project is to learn something. We'll be looking at battles I've never studied in time periods I know very little about, sometimes using weapons I've never heard of. So here's the deal. I'm going to be learning as I go, and I'm going to screw this up. I'm going to trust the wrong source and give you the wrong information. Or I'm going to get battles out of order. or I'm going to skip your favorite battle, or else maybe never get to it. I might even get the weapons or equipment wrong from time to time. And let's face it, I'm from Texas, as you can probably hear in my voice. There is no chance I'm going to get the names of Chinese emperors, or Indian cities, or Apache heroes, or even French generals right every time. And when it comes to Gallic names, well, Gallic spelling has always seemed like more of a suggestion than a rule to me, so I'm just going to do my best and try to be as consistent as I can. And when I screw up, you have a few options. You can bear with me and try to find useful information in what I'm offering you. I'm grateful for your generosity and your patience. You can unsubscribe and carry on with your life, happier now that I'm not part of it. I appreciate your attention and I'll miss you, and I wish you well. You can send me a nasty comment telling me what an idiot I am for screwing up something that seems so obvious to you. I'll do my best to find the useful information in your comment, correct what I can, and ignore the rest. Hope your day gets better. Or you can send me a polite correction explaining what I got wrong and suggesting a correction, preferably with a source or two to back you up. If you should take the time to do this, you will have my gratitude forever. I've already named my firstborn, but he might be willing to consider a change in your honor. Yeah. I'm from Texas. I'm a middle-aged, middle-class, cishet white guy who lives in the suburbs. The only way I could be more privileged is if I were wealthy, and I'm working on it. I still have a little bit of a soldier's mouth, and I'm likely to default to masculine pronouns when talking about soldiers and Marines and sailors and airmen and even guardians if we ever get that far. I lean left politically, but I'm a gentleman of a certain age, and there's a good chance I'm going to occasionally use a word or phrase you find offensive. I welcome your constructive comments and will try to keep my language as inclusive as I can. But if I have to tiptoe around every word, I'm going to lose interest in this project real quick. So please accept my apologies in advance and understand that I don't mean to offend you. And if you can't find the generosity of spirit to do that, this show probably isn't for you. I wish you well, and I thank you for your attention so far. So how does this show work? Well, there's a few different types of episodes we're going to be putting out for you. A few episodes, like this one, are going to cover background, information you need to make sure we're speaking the same language, the principles of war, my thoughts on soldiers, killing, technology, and some of the ways I like to think about the context of a battle to augment my understanding of the who, what, where, when, why. Most of our episodes are going to cover wars and battles in chronological order. We started with the Stone Age. I try to do a battle every week. Along with the main timeline, we're also working through an accelerated timeline I call 11D1 Critical Battles. This series explores some of those battles that are particularly important to the study of military history, either because of their impact on history or because we can use them to illustrate a game change in some way. You can expect these episodes once a month or so. I also like to do special episodes that tie in with U.S. holidays. These are a little different from the timeline episodes because they don't always cover battles. A holiday episode might look at a labor strike or a riot where blood was shed, or maybe the history or myth behind a particular holiday, or maybe an event that involved the military that wasn't a battle, or maybe a ghost story. And every once in a while, we're going to nerd out. Get to a particularly interesting battle, a leader I find fascinating, a technology that completely changed the game, or maybe just a particularly good example of a maneuver or a tactic. We may just spend a little time on that. Other than that, we do a battle every episode. When we don't have enough information on the battle to fill a whole episode, we might look at more than one battle, or maybe the campaign or war the battle was part of. This will probably be pretty common until we get past about 1000 CE. If I'm still alive by then. If that sounds interesting to you, I'd love it if you would join me on this journey. Oh, and one more thing. You might have been wondering why I close each episode the way I do. It comes from a story I heard years ago. The Duke of Wellington, you may know, commanded the British Army at the Battle of Waterloo. where he defeated Napoleon Bonaparte for what turned out to be the final time. Before the battle, the story goes, his men asked him for some words of encouragement. Well, being a man of few words, Wellington supposedly told him, "Piss when you can." Of course, you have to imagine him saying it with an English accent, not a Texas one. So, till next time, I'm Scott, reminding you to piss when you can. Have a good one.